Also, since we are starting, kindly open your camera with your mic off. What makes a good interviewer? It's the best way to collect data. All this and more in today's discussion. Let's begin our workshop with a prayer. To my fellow Catholics, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, we came before your very presence to glorify your holy name. We thank you for all the blessings that you've been showering upon us, the good health, the wealth, the life, and the opportunities. Today, another venue to learn has been laid before our very eyes. Dear Lord, empty our cups and allow us to embrace new ideas. Fill our minds with eagerness to further our knowledge and become your humble servants. Moreover, we appeal to your Midas touch to help those who are struggling to survive the wrath of this pandemic, that they may rise from the challenge of getting their lives back. Bless each and every one of us, so with our families, to be away from any harm and make us a blessing to others. Finally, guide our resource speaker as he shares with us his experience and wisdom. All these things we pray in Jesus' name, Holy Spirit. Amen. Friends, our Philippine national anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Seek and you shall find. These are the resounding words that reverberate to those who wanted to fine tune their craft most often. Like the inquisitive mind of a child, a researcher is always on the lookout of what is new and what recently develops. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Powerhouse Scholastic Center. I'm Mark Paul Castro, and I'll be your host for today. First of all, we would like to thank you for signing up for today's event. For those who are new students today, Powerhouse Scholastic Center is an online platform dedicated to review sessions, certificate courses, and professional advancement trainings. It employs instructors, review specialists, and trainers who are adept in their fields of specialization. PSC, although holds courses online, still maintains an office in the heart of Quezon City, Philippines. With its determined founding partners, Powerhouse is committed to deliver quality instructions across the globe and the digital world. We have a big number today. Participants' background are diverse. most of whom are teachers, training officers, government employees, and graduate school students. Also, attendees today came from Metro Manila, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and we would like to welcome back our students from straight from Cambodia. They were actually present during the quantitative research writing workshop last week, and I think they're back today. So welcome back. And also to our regular students or attendees like uh, Ma'am Emily, I think. Sir Irvin is also back. Ma'am April. Uh, Sir Ramon Macaraeg. Sir Hancock is here. Ma'am Yasmin has been attending our workshop on a weekly basis. Uh, who else? Sir JP. I think Sir JP was present last week also. And Ma'am Ruth. Ma'am Ruth was also present last week or even before that. So those who have been attending our workshops on weekly basis, thank you. This is actually the second entry of our quantitative research writing series. Next week would be the last entry of the series, which is action research writing. For those who were able to complete a research proposal, qualitative, quantitative, and action research next week, we'll be giving you a special certificate that contains a specified number of hours in accumulation. But don't you worry because in May, we'll be back for the another cycle. We'll begin with research proposal again, but this time we will be including the parts of a research. So one session for research proposal, and then the most dreadful chapter one, and then RRL, and then back-to-back quantitative and qualitative. And that will be summed up with writing research article which if you would like to publish your research work in the different journal across the globe. So we'll do that starting in May. Also, we I made mention a while ago that Powerhouse Scholastic Center is also dedicated to review sessions. Starting in May, we'll be launching two review sessions. First one is chemistry. So if you knew somebody else who is actually undergoing NMAT, they can attend a packet review on organic and analytical chemistry. And also, if you knew somebody else who is an English teacher or a budding English teacher, in May we will be offering a short course on school paper advisorship. Because I was once a school paper advisor, I handled for 4 consecutive years the school paper English of the Philippine Science High School main campus, Diliman, Quezon City. So I will be with my fellow school papers advisors in Quezon City. We will be offering a review session or a short course in school paper advisorship. So I will be training young English teachers on how to train also their campus writers on how to write editorial, news, feature, sports news, layouting, radio broadcast, and copy reading and headline writing. So all those and more in me. Please wait for further announcement. Again, should you know somebody else who is an English teacher or a Filipino teacher, because campus journalism uses two languages, Filipino and English. And we're happy that I think press conference are still being held even online. Ma'am Yasmin, yeah, nice to see you again. So spread the good word. To continue, part of PS's vision is to hold professional advancement training sessions that serve as venue for interaction among leaders, students, and practitioners of different fields. Today, we'll give you a slice of that by research series, Qualitative Research Writing. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our resource speaker for today. Our resource speaker is a well-decorated, internationally acclaimed researcher whose works have been published here and abroad. He is currently the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and the Research Director of Mary de Queen College, Commonwealth Avenue, Diliman, Quezon City. His excellent and relevant works made him chosen by the Asia Pacific Excellence Award as the most outstanding Filipino writer in 2017. He is our in-house research lecturer. Friends, meet our research speaker for today, Dr. Frederick Edward T. Fabella.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sir Mark, for the introduction again. And it's nice to see a lot of familiar faces here. Let me just say hello to everyone. Good morning, Sir Christian Quintas, Sir Irvin Lawrence.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sir Eddie Manzano. Yeah, good morning. Ma'am Emily,
Morning, sir.
Sir Gary Antonio, Sir Gerardo. I think Mr. Heng Hock is the one from Cambodia. Okay, so good morning to you. Good morning to you there in Cambodia. And good morning, Ma'am Yasmin, Sir JP, Ma'am Christine, Ma'am Lena Lynn.
Morning.
Good morning po. Miss Great.
Good morning, sir. Good
Okay,
morning.
yeah, that is a very interesting name. Good morning, Sir Ram, Ma'am Ruth.
Morning.
Good morning. And Ma'am Sandra Lynn and Sir Winfred. Okay, so let's look forward to a very productive morning, and we will try our best to cover as much as we can about qualitative research. No, during this morning only. No, we have only around 2+ hours to try to learn as much as we can from qualitative research. Okay, so let me just if I may, let me already share my PowerPoint slides. Okay, so wait a minute. All right. Okay, so let me know because we know we always have some internet issues, no connectivity issues, technology issues. So let me know if the slides suddenly stop moving or if you can't hear me anymore, so that we can fix whatever issues that arise. Okay, so I hope the screen is already shared. Can you see it already?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so let's begin. So we will be talking about qualitative research. Okay, so as Sir Mark has shared with you, the course outline for this morning will be the following. No? We will start with the nature and characteristics of qualitative research. So we will begin by understanding how different it is from quantitative, because we are very much used to quantitative research. No? And we will also go through the different qualitative research designs. Now, there are numerous designs, so we will try to discuss only the major ones, the ones that are commonly used, okay? And also how to collect data for these different research designs. And then because we all know that one of the research designs involves interviews, we will also try to find out how to become an effective interviewer. Sometimes that's where the problem arises, how to conduct the interview. Okay. Also, we will try to find out how to analyze qualitative research data once you've already gathered your data. And then we will look at all the steps once more, an overview of all the steps in conducting the qualitative research. At different points of this morning session, I will be asking you to think of your own. Now try to, as Sir Mark has pointed out, no, this should be somewhat like a workshop. So you will try to think of a topic, a topic that you can probably engage in qualitative research. Okay, so I'm not sure. I'm hearing an echo. Is that Sir Mark? Okay, so okay, so it's gone. Okay, all right. So let's begin. All right. So the nature of qualitative research. So this is just an introduction. All right. So qualitative research is concerned with developing explanations for social phenomena. So remember that qualitative research almost, well, it is always 100% about people. No? As opposed to quantitative research, because you can study non-human non-human subjects in quantitative, right? But in qualitative, it's always about people. It's always about experience, the social phenomena. All right. Aside from that, qualitative research helps us to understand the social world. Okay. It is concerned with social aspects of our world and seeks to answer questions. So these are some of the typical general questions that qualitative research attempts to answer, like why people behave the way they do. Sometimes you see people doing this or that, and you become curious why. Why do they do that? Or something cognitive, like ideas, opinions, attitudes that people form. Okay. Also, how certain events affect people. Like, for example, what's happening to us right now. If you are curious about what that, how that is affecting us, that can be an object or a topic for research. No? All right. Okay. So another example: how and why cultures practices have developed in the way they have. Okay, so these are just some of the things that you can explore. So just to give you an idea. So it's really very radical, radically different from quantitative research. All right. So you have to keep in mind that the strength of qualitative research is its ability to provide complex textual descriptions of how people experience a given research issue. Remember, experience is personal to you, to a person. But how do you communicate that experience to another person? That becomes the challenge of qualitative research, because that's how you explore the phenomena of experience of a particular person. Okay, so again, as I've mentioned earlier, qualitative research talks about the human side of an issue, human experience, and it involves practically the totality of human existence. You can study anything. Okay, all right, and it is effective in identifying intangible factors, things that you cannot really see or measure directly, but you can try to extract from the person, from the people that you are studying. No? Okay. So, all right. So one characteristic of qualitative research is that it is inductive. The beauty of qualitative research is that it is from qualitative research that you come up with a theory about human behavior or human thinking. No? You gather data from people, and then you come up with an idea as to why these people reacted in that way to a particular issue. No? So uh, it's somewhat like it's a reverse, or it's the yeah, it's the reverse of quantitative, where you gather data and then you try to prove the theory, or try to test the theory how it works in a particular situation. But in qualitative research, uh, the opposite happens. You start with the experience, and then from the experience you might be able to develop your own theory. All right. So since it is subjective, no, it is personal to the people experiencing that particular phenomenon. No? It involves also the personal views of the researcher because the researcher is very much involved in the process of data extraction. Okay, so as I was saying, no, data analysis here in qualitative research is very much influenced by the personal experiences and opinions of the researcher. Okay, so because of that, we will find out that there are certain limitations of qualitative research, no? Because the researcher is part of the research. That's why in some context, no, the people that the researcher is interviewing is also called the co-researcher, no? Because the researcher is also becomes part of the research because he's the one interpreting, and he's interpreting based on his experiences and opinions. Okay. All right. So you will find that out later. The researcher is inextricably tied to the research process in qualitative. All right. So of course, it is an interactive process. Now, try to imagine quantitative research. You can do quantitative research without even interacting with the respondent. No, just post a Google Forms survey. That's it. You don't even see, no, or you don't even know the name of the respondent unless you ask in the Google Forms, right? But in qualitative research, you have to be there. You have to see the person. No? Of course, nowadays you have to do it online. But if it was not the new normal, you would have to be there face to face with the person you're interviewing. All right. So again, as I have said, the researcher is an integral part of the data. That's why, for example, if you have the same topic and you give the same topic to two different qualitative researchers and they both attempt to investigate the same topic with the same respondents, no, they will probably come up with very different results. So it's really dependent on the researcher. That's why the researcher is an integral part of the research itself. Not like in quantitative research. Now if you have two researchers investigating the same phenomenon, no, you have the same topic and they use the same instruments, the same questionnaire, their results will be practically identical, assuming that there is no fault in the statistical analysis. No? That's why you will find out the limitations later of qualitative. Okay, so here we go now, the limitations. It is difficult to demonstrate scientific rigor. No, meaning, that the scientific method follows a step-by-step process, right? And the problem here is replication. It's difficult to replicate a qualitative research because you might have different results since it's really based on the researcher's interpretation. We will find out later how big a role the researcher plays here. Okay, it does not have preconceived finite set of issues to examine. If you look at a quantitative research example, you have there the statement of the problem, and the statement of the problem is very specific. You mention only particular aspects of what you're studying. You cannot study everything. But in qualitative research, you have to be open to everything. You might discover things that you did not expect to discover. That's why you want to do it, because you want to explore. Okay, so one of the strengths of qualitative research is that you are able to explore something. No? All right. So as I've been saying earlier, because the results of your qualitative research will be dependent on the researcher, it's difficult, or actually, it's not objectively verifiable. No? That's why two researchers researching the same topic will most likely have different results. Okay. But that's okay. That's the nature of qualitative research. All right. Okay. So another limitation is that the reason why a lot of people hesitate to engage in qualitative research is because it is time consuming and sometimes it is costly. No, I don't know. Um, if you have to, for example, you have to interview someone, and you have to find time to do that. What if that person is not available? No, on the day that you want to interview that person, the person is available on the day that you are working. So, what will happen? You'll have to go. You'll have to be absent from work. So it becomes costly in that sense. No? Okay. So, uh, one of the biggest investments that you need to make in qualitative research is time. Okay, that's why a lot of people they invest a lot of time in qualitative research. Okay, so this requires, especially in data collection, in interview, in collecting data using interview, it requires skilled interviewers. That's why before you even try to do qualitative research, you must know a little bit about how to conduct an interview. You just don't come up with questions and ask the questions. Later, we will find out that even the questions matter. No? Can't just ask anything. Okay, so that's why it's part of the course this morning: how to conduct an effective interview or how to be an effective interviewer. Okay, it also requires labor-intensive analysis. No? That's where the time-consuming process is actually more intense. All right. Okay. Okay. So because it varies, as I've been saying earlier, it varies from researcher to researcher. There is no way you can standardize. There's no way you can standardize the process of qualitative research between two different researchers. They will not agree on how to conduct it and how to interpret it. Okay, so those are the limitations. No? Okay, context is important, no? And that's why, as we have been saying, it cannot be replicated, no? And you cannot make generalizations to a larger population. If you are interviewing a set number of people or you're gathering data from a set number of people, your generalization can only be about that group and no one else. No? And that's one of the limitations. Okay, not like in quantitative where you get a random sample. No, I'm assuming that your sampling technique is correct. No, you follow the Slovene formula and etc. No, you can generalize to the population, but here you cannot. You can never generalize in qualitative. Okay, all right. As we have mentioned earlier, no, we cannot generalize. And we have also mentioned that you cannot objectively verify the results. You just have to trust the process of the qualitative researcher, how he did it. That's why sometimes it's more difficult to defend. No? If you're doing an academic paper and you used qualitative research, it's more difficult to defend your research. No? That's why, yeah, when I when I'm a panelist, no, in qualitative research, that's one of the pitfalls of the of the person defending. No, did you do your interview correctly? Are your questions? No, did you ask the right questions? Did you do the right interpretation or coding of your interview of your data? No, and there are so many pitfalls where you might make a mistake. That's why you have to be very careful, very careful. Not like in quantitative. No, sometimes you just want to make it easier for you. Just get a statistician, no, or you just use software SPSS, and that's it. Voila, you already have your research. Just gather your data as long as your instrument is valid and reliable, it's standardized, no problem. Okay, So these are the differences now between qualitative and quantitative. Okay, so let's now proceed to the process. So we will go through this step by step. Since you have learned that qualitative research is about the human experience, the human way of thinking, no? Human feeling, no? We will begin this way. So this is a flow chart that I made. No? So we will start with the first step, and I will ask you to think. I will ask you to imagine. Now, don't be too worried about what you're going to imagine. No, because this is not graded. Okay, so it's just for you to engage yourself. No, make it more active instead of passive. All right. Okay, so what topic do you wish to study? So think about a topic. Anything around you. Maybe it's in your workplace, in the school that you are teaching in your neighborhood, no? In your community, no? Somewhere here, I don't know where you are. Maybe you're in CR or in a province, no? Or like one of our participants here, he is in Cambodia. Now, what do you see around you that you want to study, you know, to explore, to find out? So think about that so that we can engage. No? No? Think about possible topics which can be studied qualitatively. So again, uh, those are guide questions. Oh, why people behave the way they do, how opinions and attitudes are formed, how people are affected by the events that go on around them. No, because of this pandemic, this situation, although sad and unfortunate, is rich, very rich in research possibilities. No? Very rich in research possibilities. Okay, so my thesis advisees in graduate school, no, they're all researching how different professionals are adjusting to this pandemic. No, teachers, guidance counselors, administrators, and so on. How are they adjusting to this? And my thesis advisees who are doing qualitative research are trying to finish finish their research in that way. Okay, so have you thought of a topic? All right, think of a topic, any topic. Don't have to. You're not going to do it as a thesis. Just think of a very simple topic, no, so that we can apply what we have learned. Think of a very simple topic which is not quantitative, which is qualitative. No, the quality of the human experience. Okay. So, have you thought of a topic? If you have, maybe you can write it in the chat box, so that we can try to see, no? Try to see how we will progress using the topic that you have chosen. If you don't want to write it in the chat box, you can just write it on paper so that you can think about it more later. Because if you look at the flow chart that I have here, no, the boxes, a lot of them are still empty. So we are just in the first box, okay? So that we can apply what we have already learned. What topic do you wish to study? It's not does not even have to be a masteral level topic now or a college level topic. Just a very simple topic. Anything. No? Okay? So all right. So if you have thought of a topic, no, keep that in mind, write it down so that you don't forget it. No? Something you're curious about. It always starts with curiosity. No, don't think of it as something that you will present in your defense. Just think of any topic, because if it's difficult, no, if you're thinking, oh, it has to be something that I have to defend in the thesis, in the before a panel. No, no, no. Just a simple topic, because we want to see how what makes you curious. All right. Okay. So moving forward. All right. So we will now attempt to discuss the five major qualitative research designs. We cannot discuss all of them because there are too many. No, and we have limited time. So we will try, even though this is a short morning course, we will try to make it rich. No, Because if we try to cover everything, you will know very little about too many things. Try to know a lot about a few things rather than know a little about many things. All right? Okay. So let's look at the five qualitative researches. The major ones, no? Okay. You have the narrative research. All right. I don't know if you've encountered that before. Okay. So another one is phenomenology. Maybe that's more familiar to you. Okay. And then we have ethnography. Right. Okay. And also the case study. All right. And the grounded theory. Okay. So we will be focusing on these five. No. So maybe one of them interests you. No? Which one do you think is sounds? Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to maybe I'll do that. No, that research design is very interesting. Okay, so let's try to find out what's the difference between all these five. All right, so let's start with the narrative research. No, from the word itself, narrative. No, you narrate. What are you going to narrate? Okay, so you use narrative research when you want to understand how research participants construct a story. How do you tell your story? No? Because the way you tell your story is indicative of how that experience impacted you, right? People might experience the same experience, but they will have different stories to tell, right? Like you're attending this qualitative research session right now, but you won't have you won't have identical stories to tell about it. No, what aspect of this experience made an impact on you, and how will you tell that story? So that's narrative research. No, all right. So there is a dual layer of interpretation. Okay, what's the dual layer? First, how the research participant interprets their own experience or their own lives. And then the second layer of the interpretation is how the researcher will interpret your interpretation. So imagine that, huh? You have to interpret the interpretation of the person. Okay. That's why in qualitative research it's really impossible to come up with an objective measure of experience. No amount of quantitative research can even approach no the qualitative research. No? You can use all sorts of standardized tests, but it will never fully capture the qualitative experience of the person. No? That's very personal to him. Okay, so personal narratives can come in a variety of forms. No? What story do you want to hear from your participant? Do you want a story about a topic? No? A specific moment in time in that person's life? No? All right? So it does not encompass the entirety of the person's life. Like, for example, how would you describe your experiences in high school? Okay? So that's topical. No? All right. Yeah. Okay. So another one. So here, the example is a research participant answer to a single interview question. So the question that I gave you already is that one. All right. So personal narrative is different, naman. No? It is a long interview. No, extended account of someone's life. So if you've read the biographies, no, have you read a biography? A biography is what the author writes about a particular person. Uh, Autobiography is the one you write about yourself. Biography is the one you write about another person. So biographies can sometimes be based on personal narrative because you're interviewed. That's why you have to interview over and over and over and over. For example, you want to write a biography about a former president of this country. You cannot just capture everything in one interview. So it's a series of long interviews. Okay, so in-depth interview extended over a long period of time. All right, entire life story. So this different, no? The earlier example I gave was being president of a country. That's not the entire life of the person. That's just being president, no? But here, if you want to really get the life story of the person, this is very time consuming. Okay, even documents you have to take into consideration, also observations. So yeah, that's how difficult that will be, no? Yeah, like for example, a historian, no? Biography of everything about a particular person. Okay, so let's look at an example of a narrative research in other countries or in other institutions. Remember, these names change. That's why it's sometimes confusing, no? Why do they call it like this? It's like that, no? Textbooks will also name different something differently, no? That's why when you use a textbook, all of you have to use the same textbook, otherwise you will be confused about names. In other countries, they call narrative research a narrative inquiry. Okay, so don't be confused, no? It's the same thing. We just call it narrative research here. So a narrative inquiry. So it's easier to understand a particular research by looking at an example. So this is my tip to you. This is my tip to you. No? If you want to do a particular research design, look on the web, since the web contains nearly everything anyway. Look for an example of that particular kind of research design. No? Read it and try to dissect it. Try to see, so this is how it's done. So these are the parts. No? Okay, so try to get the complete text of the research, because sometimes you will just find the journal version. The journal version is the shortened. The journal version is the summary. Okay, so if you really want to understand how a particular research was done using a particular research design, no, try to get the full text of a particular research. No, like this one, a narrative inquiry of teachers' perceptions regarding their professional development experiences. So the researcher here attempted to interview interview uh, teachers and how they develop themselves professionally. Okay, so usually you can look at chapter 3, how they did it, no, how it was conducted. So you look at chapter 3 methodology and you'll find out, oh, so this is how that person did this narrative research. So these are the tips, no, that I can give you, because we really cannot cover everything no, in one morning, no. In fact, if when I teach this is an entire semester, and even then, no, it's just an overview of all these different kinds of research designs. No? So that's the best advice that I can give. No? If you want to do a particular research design, try to look for an example on the web. Okay, and try to read chapter 3 because it involves methodology. All right. Okay. So that's an example of a narrative research. All right. So let's now proceed to phenomenology. Okay. So phenomenology, from the root word phenomenon. Okay. So what does it entail? Okay. So the goal is to identify the essence of human experience. That's why it's called phenomenology, the phenomenon, as described by the participants. Sometimes you get curious, so what's the difference between narrative and phenomenology? No, the difference lies in the process. No, it all deals with human experience, but it's the process of data extraction and data analysis that makes one different from the other. Okay, so you might become confused. No, it looks the same as narrative research. No, it's not. It's very different. No, because again, as I've said earlier, narrative research is two layers. No, the participant tells his or her story in the way he or she interprets his experience, and then you interpret the interpretation. Okay, all right. So okay, so there are steps like analyzing significant statements, generation of meaning units, no, and generation of essence description. Okay, so we will explore this more deeply in the coming slides. Okay, so one very common, in fact, this is the default method used in, because there are different kinds of phenomenology. Even phenomenology, there are different kinds. No? Okay, the default process is the interpretative phenomenological analysis, or IPA. Okay, so it focuses on how individuals make meaning of their life experiences. Okay, all right. So you analyze personal accounts, and you generate experiential themes. Okay, you've heard that word before, themes. Now, what is a theme? Later we will find out what is a theme. Okay, so IPA draws upon phenomenology, hermeneutics, and ideography. What is hermeneutics? It's the interpretation of the written word. No, ideography is unique experiences. All right. So, another approach distinct from IPA is the descriptive phenomenological psychological method by Georgi and Georgi. Okay, so you might have heard the Georgi, no? What is Georgi? So sometimes they just call it Georgi, the Georgi method, because the name is so long. Okay, so it has also different steps, and there are four. So read for a sense of the whole. What does that mean? Okay, so sometimes when you read, "Oh, what the heck does that mean?" Huh? When you're reading, no, you're reading the transcript of the interview, you have to take that particular attitude. So this is very different. Now you're going to change your mindset. I'm reading because I want to see the totality of the human experience here, the entirety. I'm not just reading piecemeal. So that's the distinction, no? You read for a sense of the whole. Okay. All right. Okay. So when you when you look at what you're reading already, you're trying to find the big picture. That's what it means, no? And then after you read it, you establish meaning units. Now later we will have a demonstration of how this is done. And then you transform the meaning units into psychologically sensitive expressions. Wow, what is that? Now later we will find out what that is. And then the determination of the structure. Okay, so we will be focusing on this. So at least you will know at least one phenomenological approach, no? Which is Georgie. All right. So the most common methods of data collection in phenomenology are interviews, reading diaries, participant observations. Something you observe the person. No? Use of reflective diaries. What is that? It's the diary of the researcher. The researcher writes a diary, no, about what? About how he or she interpreted the interview that he or she conducted, no, with the participant, with the research participant. Okay, so that's how it's done. Okay, all right. So an example of phenomenology, so I want you to look at this, no, this is another example. That's why I'm trying to teach you a technique, no. If you want to learn more about how a particular research design is executed, what you do is you look for an example on the web. You look for an example on the web, and like this one, a phenomenological study of the experiences of helping professionals with learning disabilities. Okay, so what does that mean? It means the researcher tried to interview. Who did he interview? Professionals with learning disabilities. Okay, so people who are working but they have learning disabilities, like we used to call it, no, well, today it's called intellectual disability. Okay, so maybe there are other kinds of learning disabilities, no? Okay, so again, you try to look at chapter 3 of a particular research, and then you will find out how was it done, what was the method used, no? Okay, so that's how it's done. So you can see how a particular researcher executed a phenomenological design. Okay, so this is one of the tips. All right. Okay, so let's try to look now at ethnography. No, so what comes to mind when you hear the word ethnography? It has something to do with ethnic. Ethnic. Okay, so ethnography is about studying a particular cultural group. What do you mean by intact? They're together. They're together. They're living together right now. You know, they are interacting right now because you can identify a group of people, but they're not together, right? For example, you identify a particular province, and then you say, I want to study members of that particular province. But the ones that you are interviewing are living in different countries. So that's not ethnography. Okay, so it has to be intact. It has to be in their natural setting, and it has to be for a prolonged period of time. So again, that's why qualitative research is very time consuming. No, if you choose ethnography, no, if you choose ethnography, you will probably be using observation and interview. Okay, so you have to analyze within a specific frame. No, you have guide. You have a guide for what you want to see, what you want to observe, and what you want to ask when you interview them. Okay? So there are 4 types of data collection used in ethnographic research. So what are they? So you can use participant or non-participant observation. No? When you are a participant, you actually live with them. No? Non-participant, you are an outside observer. You're just there in the outer fringes. You don't do what they're doing. Participant means you do everything that they are doing. You use semi-structured interviews, no? Or you use unstructured interviews, or you use materials that that particular group or culture has produced. Okay, all right, or books or reports. All right, so again, let's try to understand ethnography using an example. Okay, this is ethnographic research attempting to explore drinking youth cultures. We all know that you learn vices during teenage stage, right? We learn all these vices, and sometimes young people don't outgrow these vices. No, they keep on engaging in them. So you want to find out, no, what makes them engage in this particular behavior, what draws them together, what are their commonalities, no? So the researchers attempted to do that, no, by observing the participants. Okay, so again, if you want to find out more about ethnography and how it's done, you look for a research. You look for a particular research using that research design, and then you will see there the methodology, and you'll find out, oh, how did the researcher do it, because that will give you an idea of how you will do your own if you want to do ethnographic research. But of course, it is actually very rare for me to see a researcher, an academic researcher, doing an ethnographic research. No? I think I've seen one before in one student, in one masteral student. No, he tried to study the dumagats. You know the dumagats, right? No, that's ethnography. No, he tried to study the dumagats. That's why it took him, I don't know, more than a year before he could have his defense. No, because he had to interact, he had to interview, he had to observe. No, so that's ethnographic. No, the dumagats, and how he wanted to find out how the modern society around them is changing them. Is the pace of modern advancement affecting them already, the dumagats, no? Okay, all right, so that's an example also. Now let's go to case study. Again, this is one of the more familiar types of research design. Okay, so you attempt to study a particular, actually case study can be so can cover so many different topics, no? Program, an event, an activity, process, or just one person or one or more individuals. So there are so many things that you can study in case study. That's why sometimes, so what's the difference between all this, no? Maybe the only thing that you see different is ethnography, no? But the others, they look alike. That's why it's so confusing sometimes for the first time student, no, who wants to do qualitative. Which one do I use? It looks all the same, no? Okay. Now, a case study is one that is bound by time and activity. So there is limitation here. It is bound by time, no? So the phenomenon that you're trying to study is limited by a particular time. Uh, okay. So later we will see an example. And also the activity, like for example, the program or event, no? So that's what a case study involves. Okay? So because there is a specific frame, no, the specific setting, you have to you have to also use different kinds of data collection. Okay, so and also data analysis. So the most common techniques used in collecting data for case studies are personal interviews, direct observation, and archival records. So you can choose one or choose two or choose all of them. In fact, case study can also be used in quantitative or in mixed method. No? So that's why this is a very flexible research design. It's not just simply qualitative purely. No? So you might even be more confused na. No? So I can use it for quantitative. Yes, you can also. No, you can also use it for mixed method, for triangulation of data. No? So case study. All right. So let's look at an example of a case study. Managing school behavior, a qualitative case study. Okay. So what comes to mind when you hear this word managing school behavior? No? It's about a teacher using what? Classroom management, classroom management methods. No? And the researcher probably used different data gathering techniques in order to answer uh, his or her question about how teachers manage school behavior. Okay, so it is time bound. Why? Because it only happens in the classroom. It's, for example, in this case, the teacher might have been using classroom management within a particular semester or year, or for a particular section, or for a particular grade level. No? It becomes a case study when you limit the phenomenon. Either you limit it with time or you limit it with the the activity. So those are two possible limitations: time or the activity. Okay. So you will also hear the word case study in business. So you might be confused. So what's the difference? Case study. That's something that we will not even touch on, because case study in business is a totally different creature. No, it's not academic research anymore. It involves what, um, feasibility case study. Yeah, that's what you hear. Feasibility studies. Okay, so let's now proceed to the grounded theory. Okay, so what is grounded theory? Okay, so you derive a general abstract theory. No, it is grounded in the views of the participants in a study. So, grounded theory. That's why it uses the word theory. No, because it is grounded on what, the experiences of the participants. The goal here really is to come up with your own theory. You are coming up with your own theory. So grounded theory is the one phenomenological study which actually has to produce a theory. So if you want to become famous, no, you produce a theory, name it after yourself. You use grounded theory. Okay? Because in the others, you can also still come up with a theory, but this one is the more accepted research design when you're coming up with your own theory. Okay? So this is very complicated this time, no? How is grounded theory done? You use open coding and then actual coding and selective coding. No? So again, to be able to understand this, my tip is we look at an example of grounded theory. No? Okay, but before that, let's find out what are the data collection methods used in grounded theory. Interviewing participants with open-ended questions. No? You can use participant observation, fieldwork, or focus groups. And you can also study artifacts and text. When you say artifacts, it's uh, what that particular person or people produce, no? Whether it's books, no, literature, etc. Okay? So, again, to understand grounded theory, let's try to look at an example. No? Here. No? So this is what I found, a grounded theory exploration of the first visit to a cancer clinic. So this person maybe attempted to interview people who visited a cancer clinic for the first time, and how did people feel, no? Why is this something that's worth studying? Because of course, when you face patients who are terminally ill, no, that might have an effect on you, right? You go to a hospital or a clinic where you know that the patients are going to die eventually, no? Because of course there are people who recover, but they are more of the exception rather than the rule. Okay, so again, if you want to find out more about grounded theory, look for research, and then you try to see, so this is how it's done. How was grounded theory done? How did the person come up with his or her own theory using the experiences of the research participants? Okay, so these are the five different research designs in qualitative study that we will be we will be studying, or we have focused on today. All right. Okay. So I'm going to pressure you again. You remember you chose a topic, right? So this time, no, you will select your research design. What research design will you use in your topic? No, of course you should have you should have come up with your topic already earlier, no, so that you can go to the second stage, no. Choose your research design in your participants, no. So why is the flow chart like that? Because your research design will depend on your participants, and your participants will depend on your research design. So you have to decide two at two at once. Like for example, you're going to choose ethnography. How can you choose ethnography if you don't know the group that you're going to study? So you choose both of them at once at the same time, right? Okay. So think about that. What research design would you like to employ? What do you think is doable for you? And who will be your research participants? Of course, that's sometimes the more difficult. That's the more difficult step. I have a thesis advisee who was trying to look for experiences of COVID survivors, no? Teachers who were COVID survivors. So, of course, it's not easy to find why. Of course, there are many COVID survivors. Now, remember, the 98% of people who get COVID survive it. No? They recover. No? But will people be willing to admit that they had COVID? Sometimes people don't want to admit, and because of medical privacy, no, legally that's protected information. So my thesis advisee right now is having difficulty looking for COVID survivors. All right, and then I have another thesis advisee who is looking for guidance counselors who are trying to adjust to the new normal. Right? Come to think of it, now how does a guidance counselor deliver his or her services to students when the guidance counselor cannot see the students? How do you do counseling? Do you do counseling online? So that's what inspired my thesis advisee to explore that. How are guidance counselors delivering their services today? Okay, so again, she's also having problems with finding the respondents, no? Because there are not that many guidance counselors. We all know that there is a lack of registered guidance counselors. That's why she's having a hard time. So what I told her is, if you cannot find guidance counselors, she lives in Antipolo. If you cannot find guidance counselors in Antipolo, maybe you have to widen your widen your geographic area. No? So maybe you can cover. Maybe you can look for look for them in the entire province of Rizal. Okay. All right. So that solved her problem. Okay. So have you thought of your research design? Have you thought of your participants already? So keep that in mind. No? Later, when we have the question and answer, maybe you can also ask about that. Okay. So let's proceed. So we will now go to the major qualitative data collection methods. So of course, earlier the data collection methods were mentioned in the five research designs, no, the five qualitative research designs. Now we will go in depth into these data collection methods. All right, so we have the interview. That's one of the more popular data collection methods, and we've seen this method used in many of the different research designs earlier. You have the qualitative questionnaire, okay? And we also have the focus group discussion. Okay, you saw that it was mentioned also. You have observation, okay, and you also have document analysis. So these are data collection methods. So I'm trying to distinguish between research design and data collection method because they're not the same. Some people are confused now. I'm going to use focus group discussion. That's not a research design. That is just your data collection methods. Oh, okay. So I'm going to use interview. No, that's not a research design. That is just your data collection method. So that's why we're clarifying now what's the difference between research design and data collection method, because that's the first confusion that happens all the time. Okay, so let's proceed to interview. Okay, so it is one of the most widely used and trusted, very familiar. Okay, you either do it face to face, but right now because of the pandemic, you have to do it online. No, Okay, so there are limitations there. Why? Because of course the person you want to interview has to have a computer or a gadget, has to have Wi-Fi or connectivity. That becomes a problem. For example, the some of my students who are trying to do qualitative study, they wanted to interview how they wanted to find out how the pandemic affected street vendors. Street vendors, you know, street vendors, right? People who sell fishball, quack quack, and what the isaw. Okay, and how do you? So okay, so how will you interview them? What if they don't have a smartphone? What if they don't have Wi-Fi? So how will you interview them? You cannot interview them face to face. No, you cannot ask them, okay, please, I want to interview you, sir, but please buy a smartphone and can you get Wi-Fi also? So you see the problem there, no? So it's very challenging nowadays. No? How will you do qualitative research? No, if the person you want to interview does not have internet, does not have smartphone or computer. Okay, so you have to change the paradigm here. It can no longer be face to face. All right. So again, you use the interview depending on the research design that you are using. Okay, and then we go to qualitative questionnaires. So what are qualitative questionnaires? They use open-ended questions. What do you mean by open-ended? The research participant can talk about anything, no? In the questionnaire, of course. No, it depends on how motivated that person is to write everything. Sometimes, no, it's difficult to put in words in writing what you want to say. It's easier to say it rather than to write it, right? Okay. So so the person writes the answers, opinions. No? Of course, it can be tiring if you're writing it by hand using a pen. So maybe it's better to type it. Okay, and then we have the focus group discussion. Okay, so what is the focus group discussion? Participants of focus groups discussions are selected based on the topic. So again, no, what is your topic? No, what is your topic? And we will look for participants who will be used in your focus group discussion. So, for example, um, you want to study the experience of college students who are recovering from drug addiction. So, how do you do that? So, you look for college students who are now recovering, no, who have somehow stopped their addiction, and what you do is you gather them, no, and you gather them and you ask them questions, and you ask them one by one to answer the questions together all at the same time, no. So you give them they take turns answering the questions, no? And then there can be interaction. There can be interaction between their answers. They can agree or disagree, no? Just like any group discussion, no? People can agree or disagree. Oh, in my case, I this is what I experienced. No? Oh, but in my case, this is how I experienced it. This is these were my challenges, etc. So you see there that they by getting people together with common experiences, they you might get a more coherent a more coherent picture because you have them all together at the same time. A more coherent picture, no? Because what one participant shares might trigger, no, an idea by another participant, and that will make it richer, no, because yeah, right, I agree with you. What if I also had a problem with my family when I had a drug problem, etc. So because that person forgot to mention that, no, another he was reminded about it by another person you are interviewing in the focus group. So that's the advantage there. The advantage of the focus group discussion. Okay, but the challenge there is to get them all together, find a common time, and I'm not sure how effective focus group discussion can be in online. No, because like us here, can we become a focus group discussion? No, can we? Can we? It will it be more as effective as face-to-face focus group discussion? No, I have not yet encountered anyone who has done focus group discussion online. So it's very, so that will be something novel. Okay, so let's now go to observation. So there are different kinds of observation. No, yeah, you can look at the behavior of people. Okay, and you can also take notes. No, you can use videos. You can take photographs. You can record audio, do audio recordings. No, okay, you can look at the things that people use. No, if you're doing observation. All right, so there are different types of observational methods. You have the controlled observe. What do you mean by controlled? You get the people you're observing and place them in an artificial environment. No, let me give you an example. You want to observe how a family interacts, so you invite the family. No, you invite the family to the school, for example. Then you place them in a room. Then you see how they interact with each other. Do they talk? Do they ignore one another? Do they fight? No? That's controlled observation because you're controlling the extraneous variables. No? It's like putting them in a laboratory and observing them. Okay. Naturalistic observation is you go to the house of the family and you observe them there. You go there to the home. Participant observation, no, is you actually participate. No, you interact with them. You do what they do. No, you eat with them. You watch TV with them. No, that's participant. And then you can also classify observation as overt or disclosed and covert or undisclosed. No, when you say overt, they know that you're an observer. You declare, "Hi, I will just be observing you." But the problem with that is there is an effect. Now, when we are being observed, we modify our behavior. So sometimes the observer can use covert. No, you you don't admit that you are an observer. You don't admit it. No? I'm not sure if you've heard about this. No, it's seminarians. No, seminarians before they become priests, they do this. They are allowed to go outside and they pretend that they are not seminarians. Of course, the only person that knows that they are seminarians is the boss. They apply for a job. They apply for a job at a company. They are allowed by the seminary to go there, apply for a job. They work for I think 3 months or 6 months for that company, but no one in that company will know that that person is a seminarian. Only the boss. No? So that person, the seminarian, will pretend that he's not a seminarian. Why do they do that? Because they want to give the seminarian the last chance to escape. No? Do you want the world outside, or do you really want to become a priest? No, this is the world outside. This is life outside the seminary. No? Of course, they want priests who are committed, no, who will not be swayed by the allure of a salary and the maybe attraction to the opposite sex and all that. No? So they want to be sure that the person who will become a priest, no, will not choose something he has never experienced before. So the seminarian is allowed to experience that. Anyway, so that's, although the seminary is not really observing, no, it's an example of covert. All right. So let's now consider document analysis. Of course, this speaks for itself. Now you analyze documents. What are the documents? Documents that were produced by the person or people that you are studying. All right, so let's go back to the process. Okay, so now you will choose your data collection method. What data collection method will you use? in the topic that you have chosen. Okay, will it be interview, observation, no, focus group discussion, etc. Just so that you can already use what you have learned, no? And you picture how you will do your research using what you have already learned so far. Okay, so as I've said, there are many challenges to qualitative research. That's why if you're going to do that, make sure you are committed. You are committed because I have a thesis advisee who, because she chose qualitative, there is a point now that I think she's thinking about changing the research design. She's considering doing quantitative instead. No? If she chose that earlier, she would have graduated, no, a long time ago. Okay, so again, I'm not scaring you, but that's reality. You have to be very committed when you do qualitative. You have to really want to discover the answers. No? That's why in the first webinar that I gave, no, when you choose a topic, make sure you're passionate about the topic. It's something that you really want to discover, something that you really want to investigate, to explore, because your passion has to be in the topic that you want to study. Otherwise, if you're not passionate about it, you will lose interest. You will tell yourself, "What the heck am I doing? Why am I even, this is so difficult. No, why am I studying this? I'll just do a replication study." What's a replication study? No, you just do the same study that other people have done. You just change the locale. No, that's what a replication study is. No, but sometimes the panel will not accept that because they know that it's a replication study because they've seen that topic over and over again. That's the risk you run when you do replication. No? I will just sometimes kasi some graduate students will just look for a thesis, no, and in from that particular school that they're studying. No? So what thesis here got a good grade? Oh, this one got a good grade. Oh, very high. I'm going to do the same topic. I'm going to replicate. I'm just going to change the venue. No? And then, but of course, it's the same school, the same panel. Oh, this is a replication. You're doing the same study. No, I've seen this before. No? Okay, so that's the problem. Okay, so have you chosen your data collection method? Okay, so again, keep that in mind so that later you can ask questions. All right. So let us now talk about how to be an effective interviewer. Okay, so as we have mentioned earlier, interview is the most common, the most popular, no, data collection method that is utilized when you do qualitative. And it's probably the least time consuming. Well, actually, the least time consuming is qualitative questionnaire, but sometimes panelists are not really happy with qualitative questionnaires. No? So it will depend on your institution and the panelists that you face when the time comes. Okay, so how to be an effective interviewer? It's not that simple. It's not that simple. So let's try to find out. Okay, so you have to have a purpose and you have to have a format for the interview. So when you have the purpose and the format, you explain that purpose and format to the person that you're interviewing. The purpose of this interview is so and so, and then this is going to be the format. I will be asking you questions and you will try to answer as completely as possible, and if it's warranted, I will ask follow-up questions, no? Okay, so if you don't understand the question, you can ask me to clarify my question. So you will give the format. It depends on you you if you have a strict format to follow or not. Okay, so again, uh, if it is the first time that the person is going to be interviewed, no, you have to put that person at ease. No, make the person feel relaxed. At the same time, no, you set ground rules also. So again, it's case to case basis. It's up to you how you're going to do your interview. But the important thing is you explain to the interviewee, to the person you're interviewing, the purpose, the format. If you have rules, the person is entitled to know these rules. Of course, you have to assure your participant that this is anonymous and that this is going to be used for research purposes only, no? Because a person that you're going to ask will be sharing very personal experiences. And of course, there is this hesitation to share, no? That person might be hesitant to share his or her personal experience. You have to give loads of reassurances. This is just for research. No, this will be anonymous. No, this is not going to be used for gossip and all that. Okay, so all right. Okay, so you have to also clarify the role. What is your role and what is the role of the person you're interviewing? No, okay. So the participant. So it's interesting that the it will you will be reversing roles. No, the participant is the expert. The one you are interviewing is the expert because that's the person whose experiences you want to find out, and the interviewer is the student. So pretend I'm a student and you're trying to teach me your experiences. So that might give the interviewee rather, a sense of, oh, my experiences are important, no? And they will be more willing to share. Okay, so that's important. No? You can tell the person you're interviewing that he is the expert. Okay, another. Assure the person that there are no right or wrong answers. Okay, so this is a personal experience, personal opinion, etc. No? All right. Another, you would like your participants to respond to all questions fully and honestly. So again, try to emphasize this. But at the same time, you want them to only share answers that they are comfortable in sharing. So of course, you don't force the participant, no, to share something that the participant does not even want to share. Okay? All right. So you have to also work within time constraints. Now, of course, remember that the person that you're interviewing is also has his own or his or her own life. Time is precious for everyone. So ask the person if that person has a time constraint. Of course, let the person choose when he or she is available. Okay. And you yourself, yeah, also have to follow a time constraint as well. So you have to be time conscious when you're doing the interview. All right. So let the interview proceed naturally. No? If the person wants to talk and talk and talk, that's okay. But you will have to redirect the focus. No? What if the person you're interviewing suddenly asks you questions? What will you do? No? Okay. For example, you just a funny example. What if you're asking the person, "Have you ever been in love, and what does falling in love feel like?" You're asking, and then the person becomes curious. Have you been in love? Are you in love? You have to redirect again. No? How do you handle that? Okay. So that's redirecting the focus. All right. What if during the interview you find inconsistencies in the answers? No? The the first answer that the participant says, I was born in Quezon City, and later, I was born in Iloilo. So what do you do there? No? You cannot correct. Excuse me, but you said you were born in Quezon City. So how do you do that? No, you don't correct. Just let the person be. No? Okay. All right. So ask only one question at a time. Don't bombard the person with complicated questions. Have you ever been in love? And if you have, how did it feel? And with whom and when? that's that's a very complicated question. Don't ask that question. No? But what if the answer is I have not been in love? So that ends that line of questioning already. Okay, so do not pose several questions at the same time. Just pace it, no, one question at a time. Sometimes you will ask follow-up questions based on the answer to a previous question. Okay, verify the response. No, so do not correct. Just like what I mentioned earlier, the example. No? I was born in Quezon City. Now I was born in Iloilo. You mentioned earlier that you were born in Quezon City, but now you said you were born in Iloilo. Oh, did I say that? I misspoke. I meant I grew up in Iloilo. Ah, okay. Sorry. So at least now we have clarified that answer. All right. Okay. So if you did not understand the answer, if there's an inconsistency, you can clarify, but do not correct. Okay. So you could ask the person, could you repeat your what you just said? I didn't quite hear you. If the answer doesn't make sense to you, no? Yeah, the interviewee, the person could rephrase the answer. Okay. Open-ended questions, so there are no limits. So give the person all the time and chance to say what that person wants to say. No, don't hurry the person because you have 10 other questions to ask. No, if you're hurrying the person, it's too long. I don't want to transcribe too many answers. Sometimes there are interviewers. I've had students who are like that. No, I saw the transcript. Why is your transcript this short? Uh, and then I discovered that the student was actually just emailed the questions. Oh my, you will not pass the panel defense. You did not even do the interview. Okay. All right. So, for example, this question, please describe your experience during the pandemic. All right. So, let's proceed. This is one thing that we have to avoid doing, no? Asking leading questions. We never ask leading questions. There was one masteral student who underwent a defense, and I vehemently objected to the questions that that person asked because no, the questions were all leading. Okay, I'll give you an example of a leading question. The leading question is this: how much do you love your wife or your husband? That is a leading question because it assumes that you love your wife or your husband. You cannot ask that in phenomenology. What you do is this: describe your relationship with your wife or your husband. That is a neutral question. That's how you ask. No, because if you lead the question, how much do you love your wife or your husband? The person, you have limited the person's ability to answer. No, the answer will always be in the spectrum of love. But if you just say describe your relationship with your spouse, no, it can be anything. No, the person is free to say we are having problems right now. I don't know if we will last. Right? So you do not ask leading questions. So leading questions are a no-no when you do qualitative research because you're already biasing, no, the results. Okay. So ask neutral questions free of preconceptions. I had another masteral advisee, and she showed me the questions that she was going to ask. What challenges have you faced during the pandemic? That is also a leading question. Why? Because you're assuming that the person has challenges. Right? What if the person has no challenges? What if the person is enjoying, no, working from home? No? I have no challenges. I love it. I don't have to do the laundry. I don't have to, no, I don't have to commute. I, I don't have to spend money for lunch or or money for transportation. I'm enjoying my life here. Why? What do you mean by challenges? I don't have any challenges. See, you're asking a biased question. So just ask. Please describe no your life now during the pandemic, and then the person is free to answer anything. You ask neutral questions. Okay, because you're asking with the assumption that the person has challenges because you have challenges. You're actually projecting your feelings into the person that you are interviewing, and that's something that you have to avoid. Assuming that the person has the same experiences as you. That's why you only ask neutral questions. Okay, follow-up questions or sub-questions. So this becomes the art. How do you know when to ask follow-up questions? Let's say, for example, I ask you this question. You ask the participant this question. Um, Please describe your experiences during this pandemic. And then the person says, "Oh, it's very difficult." That's it. That's the only answer. What do you do next? You have to ask follow-up questions, no? Because you will not find themes when you do that. No? So you have to ask follow-up questions there. Okay. So examples, no, we call them probing questions. So what are probing questions? So you have to be aware of the situation when you will use probing questions. Like for example, what do you mean when you say it's difficult? Because the person said, it's difficult. What do you mean when you say it's difficult? That's the time when the person is able to expound. The person is able to explain clearly what difficult means. No? What do you think? No? How did this happen? No? For example, the person said something that happened. No? How? These are probing questions. How did you feel about that? No? What happened then? Can you tell me more? Okay. Oh, can you please elaborate? Yeah. If you're not satisfied with the answer that the research participant gave you, no, you ask probing questions. Because if the answers are too short, because the person is just in a hurry to get this interview over with, no, the person will just give short answers, but that will not help you. No, that interview is a fail if you did not get the answers that you wanted to get. No, the depth and breadth of the answers that you require. Okay, I'm not sure I understand. So this time you get clarification. Would you explain that to me? No, how did you handle that situation where you, for example, you got sick or you lost your job because the person mentioned that? No? So pay close attention. Pay close attention to the answers so that you know when to ask probing questions. No? You just don't wait for the person to stop answering and then proceed to the next question. Okay. All right. So how did that affect you? Can you give me an example of what you mean when life is now difficult for you? Okay, so something like that. Okay. So those are that's how you become an effective interviewer. You need to also ask probing questions. All right. Analysis of qualitative data. So this will depend on the research design, no? So when you are in the stage of already analyzing your data, no, your data has to be organized. Make sure it's organized. No? Your interview, your all your documents, etc. No? Make sure that you make the data anonymous. It's better that after you do the interview, you do not write the name of the person you interviewed in the transcript. You just identifies him as letter A or number one. No? Okay, because you're now going to analyze the transcript. All right. So anonymization is important. No? Okay. Why? Because you have to be very careful. Someone else might read the transcript and the name of the research participant is there, the person you interviewed, and you lost the transcript, but the person's name is there, no, and there are sensitive information there. So you might get into legal trouble if you allow someone else to read. So these are no, these are some of the nuances of interviews. Transcribing. Okay, so transcription. Okay, so you will produce a written version of the interview. So it's always helpful to have a recording, no? Because if you're writing while you are interviewing, no, you have to keep up with the person or what the person is saying, and that's difficult. And you might lose the chance to ask probing questions. So get a full script of the interview. Do not edit it. Do not remove anything. Don't say, oh, this person is redundant. He says the same thing over and over. Don't do that. Maybe the person is repeating what he's saying because he's emphasizing something that might be important later. Okay? All right. So do not edit. Just transcribe verbatim, word for word, even the expressions, etc. Okay? It is time consuming according to this it takes 6 hours to transcribe a 1 hour interview. So imagine that, no? You spend so many hours transcribing. You have not even done analysis yet. You've just transcribed. Okay? So, so we will discuss constant comparison. This is one of the ways by which you can analyze your qualitative data. What is constant comparison? This is based on
Dr. Fabella,
yes, sir, Mark.
they might want to take a short break.
Sure. Yeah.
Would
Okay.
you
So
like to take a 10-minute break? I know that it's been a rigorous workshop, but I suppose everyone is learning a lot like me. I have to go back so that I can finish my thesis finally. So we'll take a short break po. We'll be back after 10 minutes. We'll see you. You can actually put off your camera and then we'll just open it as we come back later. Shall we resume, everyone? And thank you so much. Next time that you'll be attending our workshop, you can actually grab something to munch. Basta pag susubo, patayin nyo lang po yung camera para hindi namin makita. Yan. But if you want to drink something, it's okay po. So once again, we would like to thank everyone who signed up for today's kayo hapon na wala pang link. Kinabahan po ba kaya? Don't you worry because our marketing officer actually is awake at night but sleeping soundly on daytime. That's why sometimes emails on nighttime. But we'll never be a fraudulent company because Powerhouse Scholastic Center is under a company which is duly recognized by the government, specifically the Securities and Exchange Commission. So Powerhouse Scholastic Center is under CBR Academic Solutions Company with Securities and Exchange Commission registration number PG 2021-01946. In fact, this is uploaded on our official Facebook page. You can check there. So we are still on qualitative research writing workshop with Dr. Fabella. Sir?
Okay, so let me continue. Let me just open again my slides. Okay. So earlier we discussed, we mentioned grounded constant comparison. So because we might run out of time, we will proceed to the most common um, procedure in analyzing qualitative data, which is thematic analysis. Okay, so let's find out how do we do thematic analysis. Okay, so the goal of thematic analysis is to discover common issues that recur in the narratives, in the interviews, in the transcript of the research participants. Now, when you did your interview or you got your narrative transcript or your narrative stories, now you might come upon certain common issues, and that's what you're after actually. Okay, so what you do is once you have your transcript, no, you read and annotate the transcripts. You identify certain interesting points in the transcript. No, usually you read first 5 to 8 for theoretical saturation. What do you mean by theoretical saturation? Because the themes will just be recurring after usually the eight. No, so if you interview more than eight, you will discover that the themes that you will see in the other interviews will be the same as the ones that you read in the first eight or the first five. Okay, so that's what theoretical saturation means. Yeah, sometimes um, certain institutions require that you interview from 5 to 8 research participants. All right. So and then you try to identify the recurring issues. You identify them as themes. Okay. So what is going on here? So that's what you're trying to find out. Okay. So and then you develop a coding scheme. So you'll give names to what you have read in the transcript. So later we will have an actual an actual example. Okay. So you develop a coding scheme, how you name particular experiences. Okay. And then after you've coded the data, you apply these codes to the whole set of data. If you interviewed 20 people, try to see if you can find the same codes in the data that you have gathered from all these 20 participants that you interviewed. Okay, so later this will become clear when we show the example. Okay, So try to try to ensure that you notice everything, no, not just the common but also the exotic or the atypical, but do not focus on that, because what you're more interested in are the common thoughts, ideas, feelings, and experiences that you discover in the transcripts. Okay, so I'll give you a very simple example here. For example, you have a hypothetical interview, no? And then as you read the interview transcript, this is very short, no, you try to look for what word or phrase could be used to name that particular experience. Okay, and can you group them together to form meaningful categories? Okay, so for example here, the interviewer was asking the respondent about her experience, um, no, about the person's experience with a baby, who I think got sick. Okay, so what were your first impressions when you were first admitted to the hospital? Okay, so all right. Okay, so there was a person, and the person was asked to enter the hospital. No? So you just read the transcript there. No, so if you can see, if you will notice, the respondent is very emotional. So what do you think? How can you name? Can you look for? Can you look for experiences, feelings, and thoughts that you can give names to? Okay, so that's the coding process. Now you start to think, how can I code this? Okay, so let's read further. No? Okay, who is Anne? She used to live next door to me. Okay, so because you don't know who Anne is, you ask a probing question. Who is Anne? No? So was it better when you saw Anne? Okay, so that's another probing question. Okay, so it's okay. So just read it. No. So the respondent thought that when she went to a psychiatric hospital, that it would be filled with people who were crazy, quote unquote crazy, and that's her experience. So how would you code these responses? Okay, so try to imagine what names would you give to these experiences that the respondent is sharing. Okay, all right. So again, uh, the respondent, is sharing more about her experience in the hospital. Okay, all right. Okay, so just read through it and try to see if you can think of codes for what the respondent is sharing. Okay, and then you can see there that the interviewer is asking probing questions. So you need to ask probing questions to get a better feel of the bigger picture. Okay, so all right. Okay, so now the respondent is saying that everyone was kind, even though the respondent was scared. Okay, all right, and then the respondent is describing the hospital. Okay, so take note of the probing questions that the interviewer is also asking. Okay, all right, and how the interviewer clarifies what the respondent is trying to say. Right. Okay. And then, so you identify the themes. So, what are the themes? So, for this example, the themes that were identified. Okay. All right. So, these are the themes. Now, okay. So, this is the thematic analysis that was done by the researcher. in this case. Okay. So in developing a coding scheme, you try to, okay, wait, I think I skipped a few slides here. So please excuse me. Wait a minute. Let me just stop sharing. I will proceed to the actual okay, please allow me to, I think when I opened it, I skipped a few slides. Okay, so let me just fix this for a moment. Give me 1 minute. Okay, so I will just proceed to descriptive phenomenological study. So that was the example. I think the one that I gave you was an example of probing questions. Okay, so just to clarify. All right. So let me just share this one. Okay, so we heard about descriptive phenomenological study, so we will focus on this. So we will come up with an example of how this is done. Okay, so an example of a phenomenological study, lived experiences of male kindergarten teachers. Now, why would you want to study the experiences of male kindergarten teachers? Have you ever met a male kindergarten teacher? That's actually very rare, right? It's very rare to find a male kindergarten teacher. So, this is an actual study conducted by one of my masteral students, and she was actually curious to find out, you know, what were the experiences of male kindergarten teachers. Because what is the hallmark of a of a kindergarten teacher? What is the one thing that makes that experience unique as a teacher? It's about taking the children to the toilet, right? That's why sometimes you have a classroom and there's a toilet, a comfort room adjacent to the classroom, because the kids will always go to the toilet. Now imagine if you're a male kindergarten teacher and you have to do that. That's why the researcher here was interested in finding out the lived experiences of male kindergarten teachers. So this is an actual study done by one of my graduate students. Okay, so what were the problems that she wanted to answer? What were the experiences of being a male kindergarten teacher emotionally, socially, and mentally? What are the characteristics of a male kindergarten teacher? And what are the duties and responsibilities of a male kindergarten teacher? That's it. Those are the only three problems that she wanted answered. Okay. Now, what was her theoretical framework? How does a male teacher adjust to becoming a kindergarten teacher? Okay, so she found a theory that she used. No, it's called fixed versus growth mindset. No? And a growth mindset is the understanding that abilities and understanding can be developed. So you can develop your abilities and your understanding of a new situation. No? With a growth mindset, a person can believe that he can get smarter, more intelligent, more talented, as long as that person exerts time and effort. So that's the growth mindset theory. All right. Now, my former student used the phenomenological approach. Of course, she used the Georgie descriptive phenomenological psychological method. Okay, using the lived context of the participant, the life of a male kindergarten teacher. All right. So, where was the study conducted? It was conducted in the division of Antipolo City. So, she interviewed Department of Education public school teachers who were handling elementary in Antipolo City, because that's where she lives. All right. And then, what was the sampling design and technique that she used? No? She used as inclusion criteria. By the way, though, you need to set your inclusion criteria. What do you mean by male kindergarten teacher? How will you answer your problem with the participants that you will choose? So you have to choose your participants very carefully. So she chose male kindergarten teachers who has had at least 1 year minimum experience. Why? Because a male kindergarten teacher who has had only 1 week of experience cannot possibly have much to share, right? You don't have much to share if you've only had 1 week experience, right? So she used what is called an inclusion criteria. It has the participant has to be male, has to be a public school teacher, has to be handling kindergarten, and has to have had at least 1 year work experience as a kindergarten teacher, so that the experiences would all be similar, because a first time kindergarten teacher who has only taught 1 week will have different experiences from one who has taught 1 year. So your inclusion criteria has to narrow down the phenomenon that you're trying to study. Okay. All right. So the five participants, she only chose five. So she was able to satisfy the theoretical saturation, because the themes will be repeating if you interview more than five. All right. And then these were the interview questions. Now look at take note of the interview questions. Again, these are actual questions that were asked. No? How would you describe your experience as a male public school kindergarten teacher, emotionally, socially, and mentally? How would you describe your experience with the parents of the kindergarten students? How would you describe your experience with toilet training? How would you describe your experience with proper grooming of the students, of course? How would you describe your experience with a child having tantrums? And how would you describe your overall experience as a male kindergarten teacher? Now, look at all the questions. The questions are all neutral. They're not biased, they're not leading. Okay? There are no assumptions. She lets the participant share anything he wants to share. Now, using these questions. Okay. Now, after the interview was transcribed verbatim, the researcher read the transcript multiple times to look for distinct experiences. So multiple times you read it, read it, read it. You don't immediately start coding. You have to read it a number of times. Okay, and then you identify these distinct experiences, and then you code them. You name them. You give them names. Later you'll see the example. Okay, and then these meaning units are also called sub-themes. Okay, and then when you find sub-themes that are similar or closely related to one another, you group them together to form the themes. So the themes are what you're actually after. So these are the stages. These are the stages using Georgie that was actually employed by this researcher here. Okay, so let's just focus on one question since we are limited by time. What were the responses that the researcher got from this interview question? Okay, so when you have already your transcript and you've already identified the distinct experiences, you can use a table like this. Okay, so you create a table like that, and the ultimate goal is to come up with the themes on the left. So you start on the right. You first write down the distinct experiences. Let's look at the distinct experiences that the research participants shared for question number one. Remember, this is for question number one only. You cannot discuss the entire thesis. No? Question number one only. Okay, so one participant said, I consulted with another co-teacher. Then, of course, there are nephews. So what I do with my nephews is the same. So that's the experience that the research participant letter A. Remember, you have to anonymize. Is there a word like that? Anonymize. You have to make the names anonymous, just in case you lose the transcript and someone reads them. No. Okay. So She coded this distinct experience as sharing of ideas. Why? Because the participant consulted. No? Okay. Now let's look at what the other participant shared distinct experience. Letter B said, research participant B said, I'm a strong person no matter what I hear from, when you say parents, it's parents of the kindergarten teacher, students, not the parents of the research participant. Okay? No matter what I hear from the parents, because there is something to be said, and I can say that as a male teacher. So it means that the male teacher tells the parents whatever he wants to tell them. So the researcher coded this as being strong. Okay. So again, the coding is up to you, no, the researcher. No one can tell you whether or not your coding is right and proper because it's you. You're the one who conducted the interview. Okay. All right. Another experience by letter C, research participant C, we're emotionally becoming a family of children, no? The family with the children. So it feels like it's part of the family of the children. So, what was the coding of the researcher? Being attached to children. So the researcher, the male kindergarten teachers feel that they're becoming attached to the children. Okay? And another one shared by research participant letter D, it's fun to be a teacher, especially in kindergarten, because just like I said before, at the beginning, I thought of my son. No? So he was comparing his son to the children that he was teaching. What if my son is one of them? Then they failed me. Nothing will happen. Of course, we will be sad. So I enjoy teaching them. Okay, so again, the because this is a free flowing interview, you cannot expect no grammatically correct constructions of sentences. Because this is interview, this is not composition writing. Okay, so how did the researcher code this? Self satisfaction. Okay, the male kindergarten teacher, letter D, felt self satisfaction from this distinct experience. Okay, so again, these are extracts. The distinct experiences are extracts from from the transcript because you do not write the entire transcript in your thesis. You just get the distinct experience. Otherwise, your your thesis will be hundreds of pages thick, no? Okay, so the the researcher here joined together sharing of ideas, being strong, being attached to children, and self satisfaction. She found that they could be interrelated to one another. Again, this is the researcher's point of view. No, we cannot say that the researcher is wrong. No, because it is subjective. If you do the research, you'll probably come up with different codes and different themes also. But this is how this particular researcher coded and came up with themes. So she grouped these sub themes together because they are related, and she came up with the theme emotions and feelings. That's her theme. That's what she came up with. That's it. That's what she did. Okay, so this is just an example. So you work in that in the process of identifying distinct experiences and then coding them, naming them, no, sub themes, and then grouping sub themes that are similar, that are related into your major themes. Okay, so you don't force them together if they're not related. All right. So it just so happens that I'm giving an example of distinct experience that were already juxtaposed to one another because they're related. No. Okay, so this is thematic analysis. You actually include that in the appendix of the thesis. You include this table. All right. So, in conclusion to that study that was done, no, the researcher found these themes: emotions and feelings, separation, anxiety, and tantrums by the kindergarten students, toilet training, and parents' reaction to the toilet training. Okay. All right. So These are the rewarding experiences. No? Despite despite its apparent difficulty, it was rewarding to the male kindergarten teachers. Okay, it was satisfying and fulfilling because remember the question is what emotional or social or mental experiences did the kindergarten male kindergarten teacher have? All right. So at the same time, the researcher discovered that the participants have a commitment to help young children. Okay. All right. So for the second question, statement of the problem number two, what did the researcher discover in the characteristics of the male kindergarten teacher from the interviews? They have patience, they are resourceful, they are passionate. No? Using the thematic analysis table that I showed you earlier, no, she came up with these themes as well. Long patience, tolerance. Okay? Okay. So they also she also discovered that the male kindergarten teachers believe that children should be loved and nurtured and treated as teachers' own kids. Okay, imagine that. That's what the male kindergarten teachers feel. Okay, for the third statement of the problem, duties and responsibilities. The main goal, according to the researcher, is uh, the main theme of that came out from number three is the goal of the male kindergarten teacher as motivator, a motivator for the kindergarten students to learn to read the alphabet, learn to write their own names, and that's it. That's it. No? And it also revealed to the researcher that it made the male kindergarten teacher proud, especially just what I said before, no? To be able to write their own names, read simple words, know how to socialize, and graduate or finish kindergarten. So these are the experiences of the male kindergarten teacher, not the experiences of the kindergarten students. Huh? Okay, so that another one is develop the basic skills and knowledge that would help children. Okay, so I think we still have 10 minutes. We still have 10 minutes for your questions. Now, as I said earlier, no, qualitative research is so, no, so it's a very deep topic. No? Actually, you can spend one session just on one research method. Okay, so that ends my session for this morning. Do you have any questions that you want to ask? You can write them on the yeah. So Sir Mark will be handling your questions.
All right. So, would you like to ask questions po to Dr. Fabella, especially those who are currently writing their study? Sir Gary. Sir Gary, what's your question po? Kindly write on the
Yes.
chat box.
Oh,
Then,
oh, sorry.
yes, sir. Sorry, you can ask actually.
Okay,
So,
first of all, I would like to congratulate the organizing committee of this seminar, and also to Dr. Fabella for this wonderful and very insightful tips and information about qualitative research. Congratulations, Dr. Fabella. Okay, my question is on triangulation. So I believe triangulation is a very important thing to consider also when we are conducting qualitative research. So for example, we conducted case study, and our primary source of information are the respondents or the participants themselves. So how could we do triangulation in this sense if primarily what we are actually uh, interviewing, or um, the source of our data would be those informants or participants? Will that be applicable in this situation? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Gary, for that question. As we have mentioned earlier, triangulation is a data collection method, and it aims to verify what you gather from a particular data gathering method. For example, you want to verify whether what you got from the interviews is actually true. Triangulation is used to verify, because sometimes the person that you're interviewing may not be as candid or as open when talking about his or her experiences. That's why you have to triangulate. So you can also use questionnaires. You can also use observation. No? So by using three different data collection methods, you have already triangulated your information. So you present your data uh, based on interview, based on observation, and based on questionnaires, and find out if there are inconsistencies. If all your data are consistent, then you have successfully verified your findings. So yeah, that's true. Data triangulation is very important, and it is usually done in case studies. That's true. Yes, sir. So I hope I've answered the question. So it will depend actually on the, as we've mentioned earlier, it will depend on the topic, it will depend on your research design, and it will depend on your research participants. So you don't you can use triangulation depending on your research design and your participants and your topic.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Dr. Sir Gary. Was Dr. Fabella able to answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Fabella.
Thank you, Sir Gary. Let's just have question of Sir Irvin before I'll recognize Ma'am Christian. Sir Irvin's question, Dr. Fabella, there are actually two. First one is, please distinguish between the three interview, focused group discussion, and key informant interview. It's the first one.
Okay. So as we've mentioned earlier, no, you conduct your interview depending on the topic that you want to study. So of course the person that you're going to interview has to be germane to the topic. No, for example, in the discussion earlier, for example, you want to interview people who survived COVID. No? So of course you cannot interview people who did not survive COVID, who have never had it. So they become your key informant, your key interview informant, because they're actually the ones who you want experience from. But you can also interview people, no, as a mode of triangulation. You can also interview people who lived with the person, no, the family members of that person. That's also interview. You can still interview these people if you want to verify what the key informant is telling you. Now, so in the focus group, you have to get informants that have similar experiences. Remember that focus group is also a data collection method. So, for example, you can, let's say for example you find five COVID survivors. You can interview them one by one, or you can interview them all together, and that becomes a focus group discussion. So again, that's just data collection method. So it's up to you which one do you prefer. That's why in the process, no, I ask you to choose what data collection method you want to employ in your research design. So I hope I answered that question.
Thank you, Dr. Fabella.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. His second question is, do we refer to the respondents as co-researcher when doing qualitative research?
Okay, so that's another no, institutional nuance, because it will depend on the institution and the school. That's why I interchange the words I use, no, co-researcher, research participant, interviewee, because depending on the institution, depending on the school that you are connected with, no, the name of the person that you're interviewing will change. So that's why I keep using different terms for them. But it will depend on the rules of your particular institution. That's why I cannot prescribe a set format for anything because no, you might get confused. That's why I always recommend get a sample of a thesis from your institution and use their rules. No, because if I prescribe my own rules, no, you might get in trouble with your institution, with your school. Okay po. So it's up to you. It's up to your institution po.
Thank you, Dr. Fabella. Ma'am Sandra Martinez posted the question. Ideally, how many respondents do we need in a qualitative research?
Okay, so again, as we mentioned earlier, theoretical saturation can be achieved as with as little as five. But if you want to be safe, you try to get as many as eight. But again, it will depend on the institution because I do panel defense for different schools, and then there's this school who wants at least 20. So it really depends on the institution. Eh. But based on what we have seen and what we have read, no, you only need at least five to be safe. Eight, but again, disclaimer: it will depend on your institution. Do not argue with your school if if they want 20. So it depends on the school talaga.
Thank you, Dr. Fabella. Now I recognize Ma'am Christian before I move to Ma'am Emily's question.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, sir, for sharing your wonderful thoughts about this research. Now, I just want to know other references that you can suggest to me or probably to everyone here about analysis of qualitative data.
Uh, I actually cannot. Can I get back to you on that question? Because right now I cannot think of because I base it all on what I know. No,
Mm.
I cannot really cite, but I can refer you to good ones. No, I'll just look it up. No,
Yeah, okay. That's okay. Thank
okay,
you.
yeah, okay. Thank you, Sir Christian, for that question.
Next is Ma'am Emily. Uh, is there a specific data collection method for each research design, or can we choose just one, any of them?
For as we have mentioned earlier, no, for each research design, there are recommended data gathering procedures. No? And the most common that I think you can use for all of them is interview. No? And you cannot really say that one data collection method is the only option that you have for a particular research design. That's why it is my suggestion that if you really want to find out how it's done, no, you can look at uh, examples of researches that have been done using that research design so you can get a better idea. No, especially the published ones, no, the researches that have been published, meaning they've been peer reviewed, meaning they've passed scrutiny by other academicians. So it means that they are what that researcher did was acceptable to them, and you are safe when you do a research that is based on what others have already done so far. Okay, because there are so many research designs that we discussed, right? So yeah. So I hope I answered that question. No, there is no particular data collection method that is prescribed, but there are recommended.
Thank you, sir. More questions? Can we give ourselves a round of applause then? Job well done, everyone, especially to Dr. Fabella. To the new participants, to the new ones or the newbies in our center, we hope that we'll get a feedback from you. You can just write on the chat box or you can just email us, and our marketing officer will be posting it on our official Facebook page. So next week, we'll be seeing Dr. Fabella again for action research. That's already the final entry of the research series, but uh, he'll be back in May for the or for starting again from scratch our research series writing. So finally, Sir Lawrence, your action research will be seeing you after two sessions. You'll be seeing your action research. So we'll be having that by next week. Dr. Fabella will have a short discussion on that. Um, I think most of you will be asked me if could you have a copy of Dr. Fabella's lecture today. That makes Powerhouse very different because we'll not only give you a copy of his PowerPoint presentation, but we'll give you a copy of the recorded lecture today. So the entire seminar you will be provided. But please bear with us. We'll send you that by Tuesday. Magpapahinga lang po kami kasi Sunday ngayon. Magagalit na po si Lord sa amin. Because in fact, we are still having another workshop in the other virtual venue. That's bookkeeping and basic accounting for non-accountants. Parang mag-overtime yata sila kasi ngayon nagjo-journalizing sila. So wala pa sila sa baka 2 p.m. sila matatapos. Then again, those who attended today and those who also attended thank you, Sir Irvin. Those who attended also our quantitative and qualitative will give you different certificate beside the certificate that you earned today. Uh, we'll combine the number of hours because I believe in the government offices, there are a number of hours being required so that your certificates will be merited. So I can understand that. Today, even though it's just from 9:30 to 12, I'll indicate in your certificate an 8-hour completion of an 8-hour training because I know that's a requirement. I was once an employee of a government sector, specifically DOST. Pag 5 hours, hindi nila pinapansin sa HR. Can I still get complete inclusion observed by me? Yes, ma'am, Sandra. You just have to complete the research writing series so that I can give you a 40-hour a certificate that indicates completion of a 40-hour training on research. Ma'am Yasmin is one. She was here already during research proposal. Ma'am April, we've seen her once during the research proposal, but actually she's been active offline. So she was around with quantitative and then today also. So again, you will not only be provided with PowerPoint. We're very sorry we cannot provide you the exact PowerPoint of Dr. Pabelia because that's his personal property, but we'll be providing you the recorded lecture. So even though you are enjoying your couches, popcorn, and Netflix, you can still go back to this lecture. And again, we'll be giving you the series again of research writing lectures in May. We'll start in research proposal writing. And then another lecture for introduction, the most dreadful chapter one, and then another for RRL, and then back to back qualitative and quantitative. And then will provide you a cumulative certificate by then once you completed everything. Ayan, research flicks daw sabi ni Sir Lawrence. Actually, I've been in hiatus with research writing so I need also to go back. Parang iba na yung focus ko kasi nakalimutan ko na yata yung academe. Okay, so again, thank you so much on behalf of Powerhouse Scholastic Center. Uh, please help me in presenting the certificate of appreciation to Dr. Pabella. One moment, please. Can you see it na po? There. So kindly open your cam as I present the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Pabella. Powerhouse Scholastic Center Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Dr. Frederick Edward T. Fabella for selflessly sharing his valuable knowledge as trainer during the Qualitative Research Writing Workshop held on April 11, 2021 through digital platform. Given this 11th of April 2021. Signed by our EdTech specialist, Mr. Denny J. Rumpun, our marketing officer or finance officer, Mr. Edward Rich Bayangos, and yours truly, the program head, Mr. Mark Paul Castro. Can we give Dr. Fabella a round of applause, please?
Thank you po.
And also, we will be sending you your certificates by Tuesday together with your acknowledgement receipt because you might be needing those for reimbursement purposes in your respective offices. So we'll be sending you a copy of the recorded lecture today, certificate of completion, and acknowledgement receipt. So yun. To Sir Christian, sorry, my apology. I think Dr. Fabella will just send me the list of his recommendation as to the references that you need, and then I'll just forward to you, or else our marketing officer will do so.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Once again, those who have learned today like me, please spread the good news by liking and sharing our official Facebook page. That's www.facebook.com/PSC Philippines. And those who will be attending our action research next week. Poster will be uploaded tomorrow. So with the registration form. And still the registration fee would still be the same. To our friends fresh from Cambodia, thank you so much for coming back. I think they're having their PhD class today, Dr. Fabella. That's why their cameras are actually being put off. And to our regular trainees, to Sir Lawrence, to Ma'am Yasmin, and the rest of the gang, and to our new members of the family today. Hopefully, we could still see you by next week or in May. So from the bottom of our hearts, maraming salamat po. Hopefully, you can also spread the good news that Powerhouse Scholastic Center is not only having a good logo, but we have really powerhouse trainers at the same time, a quality seminars. We always see to it that our participants still experience like an on-site training. So para po tayo palaging nasa lobby ng hotel. So, yun. Maraming salamat po on behalf of Powerhouse and Dr. Fabella. This has been Mr. Castro signing off. Happy Sunday, everyone.